Welcome, Hudson Valley, to this week's edition of In Touch, the award-winning public affairs and issues program that runs across Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley radio stations. Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence returns to In Touch. October is Bully Prevention Month, and we talk about the difference between confrontation and bullying, how to build confidence and self-esteem, and how we can look out for others who are in distress. We invite you to join us and listen to a previously recorded conversation between Gerald and myself here on In Touch. Thank you for all the kind words shared in regard to In Touch officially being awarded the 2023 New York State Broadcasters Association Award for Outstanding Public Affairs Programmer Series as part of the 57th Annual Excellence in Broadcasting Awards. This recognition would not be possible without the incredible team here at Townsquare, all of our phenomenal guests that we learn and grow with every single week, and of course you, the listener. Whether you've been listening for a while or you just found us, thank you for taking part in the conversation and staying in touch with what's going on in the Hudson Valley. We here at In Touch are all about, well, being in touch with what's going on in the Hudson Valley. What better way to stay in touch with what's going on than by downloading the Townsquare Media mobile app for this radio station? Not only can you listen to this station live at any time using the app, but you can also listen to In Touch on demand. Besides In Touch, you can read daily articles about news, events, entertainment, and more that's going on in your community. And when the weather gets bad, you can use the app to check on weather reports and see which schools and organizations are closed. Your Townsquare Media app is also the best place for concert and event tickets. We are constantly giving away tickets to the hottest shows in the area. Again, you'll have access to all of this if you download the Townsquare Media mobile app for this radio station. In Touch is nothing without the support of the hundreds of listeners we get on a weekly basis. Thank you so much for listening and taking part in the conversation. If you listen to In Touch through a podcast service such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving a positive review. With more 5-star reviews on these platforms, the algorithms will work harder to promote our show and bring In Touch to new people. That and also sharing In Touch with your friends and family is so important. Just sharing our links and listening live each Sunday goes such a long way. Thank you all for what you do to stay in touch with what's going on in the Hudson Valley. Hello, Hudson Valley. You're listening to another episode of In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. I'm excited to have this guest back in the studio. With us today, we have Chief Master Gerald Dunn, owner and operator of Karate for Excellence. And last time we had Gerald in, we focused very heavily on what it's like to be a role model. This time, we have a very heavy subject to get into. September was Suicide Prevention Month. October is Bully Prevention Month. And both of those two things go hand in hand. And what Gerald is doing with Karate for Excellence is incredible when it comes to working on self-esteem and bully prevention. So I'm really excited to talk to him about it today. Gerald, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. We've been talking well before getting onto the mic, and just some of the things, the facts, statistics that you've been throwing out are phenomenal. I can't wait for you to get them all out here for the In Touch listener base. But before we do that, just in case somebody didn't catch that interview that we had a couple of months ago, could you give us a little overview on what you do with Karate for Excellence?
Our program is, not just physical training, big focus on character development. We want to see all our students, live life to the fullest, do well in their professional lives, private lives, academic lives, be strong enough to be able to protect themselves. We don't ever want to see them victimized. And we want to make sure that they just grow up to be good people.
Absolutely, and that's all you can really ask for. But having the right kind of training, the right kind of mentorship really does make a difference. And we were talking a moment ago about just where is that safe haven for people. We talked about before how, now in a very technological landscape that we're in, being at home isn't necessarily that landscape either because of cyberbullying or something like that. But based on everything that's going on with Karate for Excellence, it sounds like you're creating a safe haven there in your studio, and you're trying to instill a lot of those feelings, thoughts, and processes onto all of your students. Could you get into that for us?
We do a lot of what we do is specifically related to protecting yourself from bullying. Yeah. We always have to remember not all bullying is physical.
Yeah.
We don't want them to present themselves as being vulnerable. We talked about this a little bit before. There's 3 things that actually make it bullying. A lot of people don't understand the difference between conflict and bullying. We all have conflicts. We argue with our wives, argue with the kids argue with each other. But for it to be bullying, there's 3 elements that have to be present. Number 1, there has to be an intent to do harm.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not accidentally bumping into somebody or something like that. Secondly, it's a behavior that recurs. It's ongoing. It's not a one-off thing. And then the third one is what I think a lot of people have trouble really kind of understanding is there's an imbalance of power.
And that's a big one.
That's the most important thing because a lot of times you'll hear somebody talk about a kid getting bullied and they, like, well, he needs to toughen up or she needs to toughen up. She needs a thicker skin. But they're not capable of that. If it's a 16-year-old linebacker, high school linebacker, and a 9-year-old kid, how can he toughen up?
Not at all, no.
And the bullies are not stupid. They pick on people that they know they can be victimized without repercussions. They look for vulnerable people. And unfortunately, they're out there. You'll see kids with autism are going to be bullied. Special needs kids can be bullied. So we have to figure out a way to handle the situation. Conflict resolution techniques don't work.
And I thought it was really big that you said the difference between conflict and bullying before we got on. That was not something that was on my radar or anything I was thinking about necessarily, because you're right. I feel that there's a lot of people and organizations, whether it be a school, a camp, a daycare, or just simply a workplace environment that don't recognize the difference between conflict and bullying. They will treat it like conflict and be like, we can sort this out. But the 3 things that you said about the bullying, it's the pattern, the intent, and the imbalance of power. Those are the things that are going to be getting in the way every single time. Those same conflict tactics aren't going to be working in a bullying situation. And most of the time, it goes unnoticed. Didn't you say before, you had a very interesting statistic on that?
Statistically, the most common place for bullying to occur is in a classroom with the teacher present. There's this assumption that bullies are stupid.
No.
They're not these big dumb guys that go around pushing people around. A lot of times they're the athletes, they're the cool kids, they're the ones that everybody else looks up to because they're the ones that can get away with it. A lot of times even the victims look up to their tormentors. I mean, I'm old, but I even remember when I was a kid that, the cool kids weren't necessarily the nice kids.
Yeah.
But just for whatever reason, they have charisma or something like that, and everybody's attracted to them. And a lot of times, those are the ones, they're the people who can do the bullying because they're the ones that can get away with it.
Yeah. It's that clique mentality. It's like there's something about that group, that unattainable group that some people will look at. It's like, I wish I was a part of that. Then I would be cool. But it's not necessarily because they're all that popular. They're very cliquish. They stay to themselves. They're not getting around. What's the point?
They're not going to let you in. But
no.
But they want to kind of bask in the light, so they kind of hang around.
Exactly.
I've actually seen videos of surveillance videos where you'll see a kid getting bullied, and they'll chase him, and he comes right back. And it's hard for people to understand how that could happen.
Yeah.
But if you look at any abuse situation, it's very common. And, bullying is just a form of abuse.
Yeah.
When we're talking about conflict resolution, all the power's in the hands of the bully. He doesn't need to negotiate.
No.
And then there's no power in the hands of the victim, so they have nothing to negotiate with.
Yeah.
Both people have to have something to gain in a negotiation, which is what conflict resolution is. Unfortunately, too, what happens a lot of times is even when an adult finds out, they bring the 2 of them together. You cannot resolve an abuse situation like that. It's like putting an assault victim in the same room with their attacker to talk about it.
You don't do that typically. When you get into those situations, you protect them. You keep them separated. Yeah, there's measures that go into this when it is out there in the real world. And that was another interesting thing that you said, too, about by the time the bully gets older, the incarceration rate. Could you get into that?
About 40% of the bullies have felony convictions by the time they're 24.
That's big, yeah.
I mean, that's a big number.
Yeah.
If you look at the general population, can you imagine 40% of America in a prison?
Right.
That would be, but because that that behavior doesn't necessarily stop just because they get out of school. It's just transferred to other groups of people, and then there tends to be consequences for it. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, when they're teenagers, there's not a whole lot of consequences for bad behavior. And, and then a lot of times the bullies are very well protected.
Yeah.
They tend, because a lot of times the adults like them too.
A place of power, a place of status, whether that be mommy or daddy have a really good job, or
they could be the star football player.
Exactly.
Or, they could be the straight A student, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
But then you look at the victims. A lot of them are very socially inept. They don't have friends, and they're very much alone. And they're the ones maybe, they're not quick-witted. They're not going to come back with a witty comeback if you start saying something to them.
Yep.
And a lot of times, they're the ones maybe that a teacher has to put a whole lot of effort into just to get them to make a C in class.
Yeah.
And a lot of them not necessarily well-liked. And I think that when you have a kid like that that's getting bullied, he has no friends or she has no friends, they're isolated, they start to feel really hopeless.
Yeah.
Which I think is why you segue into the suicide.
Yeah.
They don't see any end to it. They feel completely hopeless. The youngest documented suicide that was related to bullying was a 5-year-old.
Wow.
If
That's
you
heartbreaking.
can imagine. If you're 5, 6, 7, tomorrow's forever. And they're just going on and on and on, and they don't see an end to it, and they become hopeless. And they just want it to stop. And it is heartbreaking, and it's something that I can get very upset about very easily. One of the things that's interesting too is I've seen research that shows that about 26% of the kids who start a traditional martial arts program have been bullied. And very few bullies train in martial arts.
That's very interesting, yeah.
But 26% have been bullied at some point. And this number comes from the kids, not from their parents.
That makes sense, yes.
Because most of the parents have no idea their kid's being bullied.
But also take that into consideration. 26% comes from the kids. Think about the kids that aren't speaking up either. That number could be way higher.
It could be a little bit higher. Surveys have shown, where they have anonymity, surveys have shown that about 1/3 of all kids are involved in bullying at any given time.
Well, there you go. 1/3. That's 26 up to like about 33 right there. So.
And if you figure half of them are victims and half of them are bullies, you can see. So you're talking about maybe 15% to 26%.
Yeah.
But it also affects everybody around them.
It's the whole environment.
The whole environment.
Everybody's walking on eggshells.
And when we train them, there's a lot of little things that people don't think about. Just learning how to use your voice, making your voice strong, learning how to stand up straight. We practice how to respond if somebody says something nasty to you. Because if you don't present yourself as being vulnerable, then you're much less likely to be bullied. Research shows that if you have a black belt in a traditional martial art, you are 67% less likely to be bullied. That is better than any other program out there in school or out of school.
That's a big number right there too. Absolutely. I remember when I did martial arts when I was growing up. It was definitely a big thing for me. The confidence building, as you said, being able to respond to certain things. I was definitely not one of those kids that could fire something off immediately. I'd have cousins or I'd have older friends who would come up to me and say stuff, and I wasn't quick on my feet at that time. But that was something that I learned. That was something. It's kind of interesting as we're talking about this. I'm thinking about this. It's like, wait a second. I'm really good at improvising these days, but I wasn't always. And it really does stem from that, actually.
Well, and the thing too is we've all been there. Somebody says something to you, and you come up with a good comeback 3 weeks later. We've all been there, and so we have them rehearse.
Yeah,
it's like a part in a play.
Yeah,
the bully, they already have the whole scenario mapped up in their mind.
Yep.
And if you can interfere with that, then it's no fun for them anymore.
No.
I mean, believe it or not, I've seen them interview bullies, basically reformed bullies who have made a decision, a moral decision that it wasn't right and decided to discontinue that behavior. But here's the interesting thing. 2 points. Number one, they asked them, why did you do it? The number one answer was, I wanted to make him cry.
Wow.
Was the number one answer.
Oh, my God.
Because for them it was fun.
Wow.
And then they asked, tell us some of the things that you did. And they would start describing some of the things they did to other kids. And even though that they have decided, this is morally wrong, I'm not going to do it anymore, they were grinning from ear to ear talking about it.
I was going to say, probably taking them back to that situation.
And they were still enjoying it.
Yeah.
They were still enjoying it. And, that just kind of blew my mind. It's like, we're talking, some people are just mean.
Yeah.
And they get pleasure out of hurting other people.
Yeah.
And, and of course, which is one reason why I think you might see the 40% with felony convictions.
Absolutely. At that point, the level of as people get older, that level of abuse is only going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's going to escalate. And as you brought up already, assault, domestic abuse, something along those lines, that's going to increase. Yeah, there's going to be the convictions. There's going to be the issues in regards to that. And then you got to try to separate everybody as best as possible. And then where do those bullies' lives go at that point? And it's just going to be a downward spiral of, unless they clean up their act, worse and worse actions.
And the only way you're going to get them cleaned up, there have to be consequences for it.
Yeah.
And they have to be pretty severe. And I think, too, that a lot of parents need to realize that if you want to do the best for your kids, don't try to shelter them from consequences of doing something wrong.
Amen.
Too many people feel like their job as a parent is to protect them from consequences of doing something wrong.
Yeah.
What you need to do is teach them how to deal with the consequences. Then they learn the lesson. I have an old saying: if being stupid has no consequences, you just stay stupid.
Yep.
And if you touched a hot stove and you didn't feel pain, you would do it again.
Absolutely.
If you feel pain, that's it. You're done.
You'll learn
ain't doing
very
that one
quickly.
anymore. And because of course everybody's going to make mistakes. But
Yeah.
I think that we kind of get past this whole thing about trying to avoid the consequences, especially teaching our kids to avoid the consequences. That's one of the things that empowers the bullies, is they know they're going to be protected.
Yeah. One of the things that I found very interesting growing up, I was very lucky. I had a lot of different opportunities that I was able to do. I went to private school, Catholic school for years, but then I also did baseball in like Wappinger's Fishkill. But then I also did martial arts in LaGrange. But then I did basketball with CYO. And I had all these different groups of people and all these different scenarios from all these different walks of life. And I felt very well-rounded in that sense. But then I look back at some of the people that I was with there in Catholic school, and the stereotype, the sheltered Catholic school kid and everything. Is like, I was just amazed after seeing everything outside of Catholic school and seeing, and then bringing it all back in. It's like, oh, wow, there really is something here to this stereotype, because we really are sheltered to a degree. And then I went to public school, and here I thought, I was like, oh, I had plenty of outside experiences. I'll be fine. It took a couple of years to really settle into that. It was a whole other vibe, whole other world. But I had to be introduced to all those things. I was lucky enough where, I was able to adapt, and I was always open to it. But I knew other people who weren't willing to adapt or didn't have that same self-confidence to adapt with the situations.
And a lot of times victims of bullies, they're socially inept. They don't have friends.
Yeah.
They don't make friends. A lot of times, to be honest with you, maybe they're not likable kids, or they have issues. It could be maybe they have some type of special needs issue. And there's something there that makes them vulnerable.
Yeah. And kids have a hard time seeing past certain things like that.
the future doesn't exist for them. It's all about what's going on right now.
Yeah,
I mean, we all know that. They're never going to give up something now for something tomorrow.
absolutely.
You offer them $5 now or $10 tomorrow, they're going to take the $5 every time.
You're right.
And so they don't really have that same concept of the future that we do.
Yeah.
And, and frankly, when they're being bullied, there are kids are out there who would like to try to help them, but they don't know how.
Don't know how. And that's where I think a program like yours really comes into play, because it gives the kids the confidence and the tools to be able to step in for themselves and step in for others.
One of the things that we teach the kids too is the difference between reporting and squealing.
Yeah.
In my mind, there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, squealing is just telling on somebody to get them in trouble. It's like
Yeah,
they
the
take
classic tattling. Yep.
tattling. Johnny didn't hang his shirt up just so he gets yelled at.
Yep.
Reporting is telling if somebody's being harmed. So if you see somebody being harmed and you let somebody in authority know about it, that's not squealing,
No.
because you shouldn't stand by and let somebody get hurt.
Absolutely.
But then I think the adults in the world have to step up once that happens.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I would tell kids, report it to your parents. Because the school's much more likely to listen to the parent than they are to the kid.
Yeah, they see the adult come in and it's like, oh, no, this is serious now. We got to.
They got to pay attention to it.
Yep.
And then if your kid is getting bullied, document.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You'd be surprised it doesn't happen all the time.
Well, at the summer camp that I worked at, anytime that there was issues with any kids, I would be one to write everything down. So then, like, Wednesday or Thursday comes along and they do that last final thing that pushes it over the edge, I have a whole document. It was like, this is what led up to it. This is why we can't have this anymore. This is why they're out of camp. And the parents will be like, what happened? What do you mean? It was like, this is what we got. This is what's been happening.
But I would tell the parents of the victims, document everything.
Yeah.
Document everything, keep records.
Yep.
Also, too, I would like to invite anybody, if they wanted to come to karateforexcellence.com. I'm going to put a parent's guide to bullying on there, free download.
Oh, terrific.
And anybody who wants to go on there and get that is certainly welcome to do so. That would be karateforexcellence.com. Or they can give me a call at 845-462-0624. And I'd be happy to make sure that they get a copy of that.
Terrific. And again, all links and information will be in the description of this episode. Really excited about all this one, and I'm glad we've had this conversation. Again, you're listening to In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. We've been speaking with Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence, and really talking about Suicide Prevention Month and Bully Prevention Month and what it means to be a bully, what it means to be bullied, and what are things that can be done to change that narrative. Now, in the last couple of minutes that we have, I really want to bring attention to the shirt that you're wearing today. Could you tell us about the shirt and the organization that you're repping today?
I belong to the Global Traditional Martial Arts, and we have set a goal to raise $100,000 for suicide prevention.
Terrific.
And, that's a nationwide effort. Suicide prevention is not necessarily my area of expertise. But, I've known people, known people who have committed suicide, and, it's a pretty horrible thing. I think that mental health issues right now are just rampant.
Yeah.
And, we need to figure out a way to help these people. So anything we can do to help that is, we just need to do it.
Absolutely. I think what you're doing already is a big part of it. Bully prevention helps out with so many people. The solidarity that you have in your classes, all these kids and all these, the adults even that are in your programs too. It's the solidarity. It's the unity. You're building the confidence. It is giving them something to be able to unite with, feel comfortable in their own skins with, and to be able to walk around after getting outside the studio, walking up taller than they probably were prior to it. So it sounds like you're putting in the work already.
And, if there's any groups or organizations out there that would like me to come in and do a bully prevention workshop, I would do that. I do that as a public service. I'd be more than happy to come in. It's about an hour and a half or 2-hour workshop.
Oh, wow.
And
That's nice.
Be glad to do that for anybody interested.
Oh, that's very cool. No, sounds very good. And again, probably the best way to reach you is the website, karateforexcellence.com, and your phone number, which was
845-462-0624.
Beautiful. And of course, that will be in the description of this episode. Gerald, again, thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap up completely, any last nugget that you want to leave our listeners with?
Be aware of your kids. If there's differences in behavior, pay attention to them. And, if they start getting withdrawn, if you start seeing they don't eat right, suddenly they don't want to go to school, they don't want to get on the bus, pay attention to those kind of signs. And you're going to have to ask questions. Kids are reluctant to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
They feel ashamed, they feel weak, and so you have to, you have to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Just don't let it go.
Just kind of like doing an interview or getting to the root of it all, asking the right questions. That's a big thing. Knowing the right questions to ask. You might ask a bunch of different questions, but you could be totally circumventing what's actually the root of everything. So that's a really good point right there, too.
Yeah, just said, I wouldn't use the word bully. Maybe, is anybody at school bothering you?
Yeah.
Which is a lot less.
It's a little softer.
A little softer, so they
Yeah.
might not be quite so reluctant to answer the question.
Yeah. Bully's intimidating. Bothering, you can kind of lead
Right.
into that a little bit.
And and nobody wants to say I'm being bullied because in their mind it implies weakness.
Yep. And even at an early age, you don't want to show weakness. That's something that's been instilled in. But if we can get that conversation and that narrative going early on, where we can report, that we can speak up, and that we can show the consequences for those actions, we'll be in a much better spot. This has been fantastic. Again, Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence. You can check out everything in the description of this episode. His number and the website will be attached. Gerald, thank you so much for coming in today.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. This has been this week's edition of In Touch, the award-winning public affairs and issues program that runs across Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley radio stations. We want to give a big thank you to Chief Master Gerald Dunn. For more info on Karate for Excellence, visit karateforexcellence.com. Just take note, it is karate 4 excellence. Of course, all links and information can be found in the description of this episode. Whether you've been listening for a while or you just joined us, thank you. You can find In Touch episodes new and old on your favorite streaming services like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. That and listen on demand with your Townsquare radio station mobile app. Of course, you can still find all articles and audio under the In Touch tab on this radio station's app and website. And don't forget, we're also on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at InTouch_HV. If you like what we do here on In Touch and want to be on the show, let us know. Whether you have a topic you want discussed or you want to be a guest, the best way to contact us is through our office number, 845-471-1500, or email direct to connor.walsh@townsquaremedia.com. I've been your host, Connor Walsh. Until next time, stay curious, keep an open mind, and as always, I'm glad we get to spend some time